Your system is set up holistically through your life. It's now this one big thing that makes sense to itself. If you change one thing and you don't have a way to make that change make sense to you in a new way, you will revert back to your old way. I see it all the time. You can make profound changes on people when you do body work, but if they don't re-educate themselves, if they don't own the changes do not last. And the only way you own the changes is that you learn how to live in your body differently. These movements and all the lessons are about learning. They're not exercises to do, they're learning to be in your body a different way. The more you could be supported by your skeletal structure, the more the central diaphragms will be at normal tone. The elastic breath is the stacking of all the diaphragms in your body. So that means arches of your feet. So put the weight over the arches of the feet. The feet are turned out just a little bit. And then you imagine that your pelvic floor is underneath your diaphragm. So if you stand like this, you're going to have to organize yourself differently. If you stand like this, you're going to have to organize yourself differently, right? So you stack those up. Then the tongue sits on the roof of your mouth. Take a swallow, the tongue's on the roof of your mouth, let it widen. And then from there, just take a few breaths. Feel them aligned. And when you breathe, if you pay attention to these things, especially in the pelvic floor for most people, to be aware of movement in the pelvic floor when they're breathing can help draw the air in fully to their whole torso so they feel that elasticity of their torso. So as you inhale, imagine that the pelvic floor widens. As you exhale, you imagine that it domes up. And as you inhale, you imagine that your tongue widens. And as you exhale, it magnetizes. So as you inhale and the base of the sinuses widen and bring in more air. And as you exhale, you go back to that start position. Same thing with the breathing diaphragm. As you inhale, the diaphragm comes down. It's like a plunger. It creates more space in the body. So the inhale is the volume drawing air in, the negative space drawing air in. And then as you exhale, you can put a little more force to it and push air out. At the end of your exhale, I'm going to have you squeeze a little more air out, squeeze a little more air out, squeeze a little more air out. Wait for the inhale. Wait until you have to inhale. And when you inhale, let it come from all the diaphragms, creating more space for air to come in. And let the inhale go for as slow and long as you feel it. And then at the top of your inhale, you take a little hover, you take a little suspension, feeling nice and full, and then slow exhale. And you let your exhale go until the end, and then you do the same thing. You squeeze a little bit out. You put the emphasis on the exhale. And then you go for another few cycles on your own. You can imagine that central column of support coordinating together, aligned over the arches of your feet. You're in your 3 keys. That means you're in your shin ankles. When you're in your shin ankles, that means you're not hyperextending, because that's what typically can happen for a lot of people when they stand for a while. That's what makes you faint when you go into that hyperextended knees. So keep the weight over the arches of your feet. This is the elastic breath. You know, when you go through the full course, you have a lot more ways to nuance the three keys, to nuance and release the pelvis. And that's a lot of nuance there before you go into the elastic breath. Some people, elastic breath, it changes everything, but I typically say that you want to free up the structure first before you go into breathing. That's why a lot of the more aggressive breathing techniques out there, I don't think they're productive for a lot of people, especially if they have trauma.